While many of us know her as Cece from the hit show New Girl, our next guest's real-life adventures are even more compelling. Born in London, she grew up traveling, living everywhere from Cyprus to Saudi Arabia. Her worldview led her to human rights works at the United Nations before ultimately pursuing a career in acting. She was an HGTV and Much Music host right here in Canada before making the move to LA, where she landed her award-winning role on Fox's New Girl. Here to take us on a journey through all of her adventures is none other than the multi-talented Hannah Simone. Welcome to the Northern Take, Hannah. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Before we dive into your impressive career and talk about all things Hannah, I want to know where you're at right now because your backdrop looks a lot like mine.
I am right now in the Milner Heights recording studio in Langley, run by Mr. David Giddings. He did a great record here, actually, called Finding Time. You should give it a listen.
Have to. So now that we know where you're at, let's take it right back to the start. You were born in England, and your family moved around a lot. Take us through some of the early years in your life and why you guys were moving all over the place.
Sure. I was actually born outside of London in Hertfordshire. And when I was about a year old, my family made the move to Calgary. And I was here until I was about 7 years old, and then we made the natural transition to Saudi Arabia.
Now, I got to imagine that the impetus to move to the Middle East had to have been oil and career-related moves.
It's funny. I feel like you are actually the first person to guess that right. Usually people are like, are you guys international spies? That feels strange. But yeah, my dad was working in petrochemicals, and so that's why Calgary to Saudi.
Well, and I lived in Calgary for 14 years, so I know that that's the sort of logical progression as to why people would go to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting how my family started this, journey around the world, really. We started to move countries every 3 or 4 years, and it was never for the same reason. Every move was motivated by something different. So when I was 9, 10 years old, the first Gulf War broke out. We were living in Saudi. And so we were evacuated. We had to leave. And we ended up going to Cyprus just because my mother is half Greek Cypriot. So we needed to go somewhere where she could work. And we didn't know how long the war was going to last. So we wanted to go somewhere where we had some family. So we moved to Cyprus. We were there for a while. And then my dad got a job opportunity in India. My dad is Indian. And so that job opportunity took us there. So we've kind of moved around for different reasons, work, war, education, all sorts of different things.
The gypsy nomad lifestyle, but with a purpose. Is those early formative years of traveling internationally and doing a lot of it, did that seed the travel lover in you? Yeah,
I mean, I guess the way I look at it is that every single time something like an opportunity arose for my parents, to have a new job, or when the war broke out and we had to figure out where to go, they just kind of looked at the entire planet as one, as their backyard, and we could go anywhere. And I think that that's like a worldview that I've retained. So it's kind of nice that if I'm like, oh, we should go away for a week, it's not just usually like within my country or immediate vicinity. I'm like, Mongolia seems nice this time of year. Let's go there.
And you have loved ones in BC, where you came back to, and you spent your 20s in BC. Talk a little bit about what the West Coast means to you, and specifically Vancouver.
Yeah, so when I left India, I was in grade 11, and I came in and I did grade 12 in White Rock. Basically the same as India. No real change.
White Rock, India.
It's actually funny because I left Canada when I was 7, and everyone talks about these places that I've lived, like Cyprus and India, like you mentioned, and they're like, the culture shock must have been crazy. But because I was living in international communities where all the kids were kind of going through the same thing, it wasn't a huge culture shock. But coming back to Canada at age 16, 17, where all the kids had been together since kindergarten and had been living in the same, neighborhood. So it had a completely different upbringing than me. I experienced major culture shock, it felt odd because for the past decade, I'd been going through the world when people say, where are you from? Saying, I'm Canadian. And then I came home and I kind of felt a little bit like a stranger in my own land. So it kind of started, which was wonderful, like this education for myself of what Canada is and British Columbia is and our history, all sides of it, the complicated side of it, the beautiful side of it. And so I chose to go to university at UBC and study Canadian politics. I ended up working for Lloyd Axworthy, an incredibly distinguished, wonderful Canadian politician who's done amazing humanitarian work. So I'm very grateful that I had that opportunity to kind of sit here and learn about this great province and this great country.
You also spent time in Toronto as well. Take us through that portion of your life.
Sure. I had been working in London. I was a human rights and refugees officer for the UNA UK. And I was really passionate about connecting with youth, talking about different world issues. And then I was sitting there writing all these policy briefings and would go out and speak to young people. I myself was 21. So this whole conversation actually sounds quite ludicrous now that I'm older and I look back. But I wanted to educate the youth and realize that everybody was, watching at the time, like Jon Stewart on The Daily Show and Michael Moore documentaries. And so I was like, I need to go back and learn how to speak their language and make things for that kind of a platform. And so I applied to Ryerson and got accepted. And so that kind of spurred my move to Toronto. Yeah, it was a very interesting city, though living in Vancouver for so long, everybody that was from Toronto had some, big city boots on all the time, telling me that Toronto was this huge, great, big city. And between moving from Vancouver to Toronto, I moved to London. So when I showed up in Toronto, I was like, this is cute.
It's Canada big.
Yeah, I mean, it's lovely, but it was so funny. It had been built up in my mind as this ginormous city. When I showed up, I'm like, this is manageable. I can walk end to end. Great.
So while attending Ryerson University, how did you end up with the gig on Much Music?
Much Music did an open call. That was kind of part of our program. I feel like every single person in our program, because here's like a TV studio coming into your university, talking to students. I feel like we all kind of lined up and went and spoke to the producers. And I ended up getting offered a job. And I was like, this sounds like a nightmare. Because at least with acting, it scared me. Because with acting, at least if I took on a character and created something and then presented it and people were like, nah, not great. I was like, that's the character. So sorry about that. But being a host, as I'm sure you feel sometimes, it's very vulnerable. You're really giving of yourself. And if people don't respond, you're like, well, that's just me, I guess. And I remember talking to Lloyd Axworthy about it and, kind of talking about how Much Music really gave the biggest platform to talk to young Canadians. And that really was my goal. And so we were doing specials on, Much Talks climate change and Much Talks HIV AIDS. And that was really like a gift of the job. So I couldn't say no. And I appreciated the fact that I was trusted with that access.
From an exterior perspective, it seems like you've got this sort of vast range of abilities. What was it that allowed you to say, I want to move to LA, I want to become an actor, and I want to make this my career?
Again, I think that was a lot to do with like my parents' approach to how they raised us and kind of took us everywhere. The one gift of that is that I don't have fear of change. Right. So it was kind of nice when I got the, that was a huge gift, which I didn't realize until I went to like grade 12 in White Rock. And I saw like, even for kids to like decide to go to UBC felt like, I don't know about that, man. That seems like a lot. And then I started to realize like, oh, I was raised a little bit differently where it's like, you can always come back here. Like this place ain't going anywhere. So you can go there. I'll come back. And so when I got this opportunity in LA, it really didn't feel like this big moment. I was like, oh, all right, cool. Like, we'll go there. Sure. So that was kind of a nice feeling in my body that those, I have other things that scare me in life, but that wasn't like a scary kind of moment. That just felt like, oh, it's another part of my backyard I haven't explored yet. I'll go kick it there and see what that's about.
I love that part that you can just go back. And it seems like if you can, and if you're lucky enough to have a soft place to fall, like we all do when we get to call Canada home, is that something that I guess always was in the back of your mind, that if it doesn't work out, we can always go back to Canada? And if so, what does Canada mean to you in that context?
I mean, when things started to get pretty complicated earlier this year, still are very complicated.
Yep.
It was not a question for where, I was going to go. I was going home to Canada. So
Yep.
there's not only because my family is here, but just because the way this country runs, the priorities that it has, makes me feel taken care of and safe. And I have a massive amount of trust in our country. I mean, that's what it means to me. And it's been tested this year. And like I said, I just got in my car and I was like, okay, I'll come back when you guys figure that out. I'm going home.
Well, it's like a security blanket, a warm, fuzzy sense of security. Now, you are so loved for your role as Cece on Fox's New Girl. Did you have any idea? You can't. People never know when they get into things, but did you have an inkling, maybe, that it could be even a portion of successful as it was?
No, there's no way. I mean, it feels like that town with those shows, there's been so many great shows that have disappeared for absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And great shows that never have gotten made that you hear about. We were just incredibly, incredibly lucky. And thankfully, we had great support from the studio and the network. But really, all the credit goes to everyone who's watched the show and loved the show because they kept tuning in. We kept on being able to make it. And I am forever grateful for that because it was the greatest experience of my entire life.
Any inside scoop on what you're working on right now to get people excited?
Well, right now, because the industry is at kind of a stop down, I'm actually getting to write a lot more and develop a lot more, which has been wonderful to have like this space to actually think about what kind of content do you want to make? What kind of characters, stories do you want to tell? So that's wonderful. And then I should be shooting in the next few months a new pilot for CBS with Elizabeth Hurley, a sitcom. So that'll be great too.
Very cool. These are projects, like you mentioned, a sitcom, but you also mentioned writing and directing and creating space for other young people to believe that it is possible for them too. Is that part of activism still important to you?
Yeah, I think it's actually really key. The idea of seeing yourself reflected in the mainstream is incredibly validating. I remember growing up. And watching Canadian television. And the only person I saw that looked like me, that wasn't just popping in and out of a show doing some sort of like funny accent or being the butt of the joke or having the stereotypes like affirmed of them, was Ian Hannamansing. I was a news anchor. And I just remember being like, whoa, are you kidding? And it's really like phenomenal because I saw him, that's one of the reasons why I felt like encouraged to go into journalism. Because I was like, well, that's possible. There's someone who looks like me doing that.
Yep.
Maybe I'll try that. So I know firsthand how important it can be. So yeah, I think it's incredibly important to be there, to stay there, to help tell other people's stories and be a different looking face doing that. And then to tell your own stories. And then to be able to hire people to kind of reflect that. It's key.
Ian Hannamansing, that voice, he's got the best voice and definitely a part of Canada that we can all proudly lay claim to. When you do venture out and you're doing travel for personal reasons, what is one of the first things that you tackle as a traveler? Is it the foods? Is it the sights? Is it the shopping? What's your motivator?
Well, so here's how I usually travel. And I'm sure for a lot of people, this is going to sound completely insane and give them crazy anxiety. But for those that travel like me, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. That makes sense. There seems to be no middle ground. I usually have no plan. So usually the first thing I have to figure out is where I'm going to stay. And I usually try to stay in like a home, like rent a house or an apartment. That seems to kind of be the first things. Shelter.
Need that.
Yeah, first thing I seek out. And then a local grocery store.
Well, that's the way to immerse yourself in a culture, is to stay in someone's home, eat what they eat, and beyond that, the world is your oyster. But yeah, I would have to concur that that would be anxiety-inducing for 98% of the population. Do you have a favorite travel story that is sort of related to this flying by the seat of your pants type of an experience?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of weird stories. When you kind of live with no plan when you travel, a lot of incredibly unexpected, wonderful things happen. But I think the one that always stands out for me is how I got to Bhutan. And Bhutan is now one of my most beloved places in the entire world. I suggest everybody at some point in their life go there, and you will forever be changed in all the best ways. I managed to reconnect over Instagram with someone that had been in our family home 20 years earlier. His name is Dorje. He is a Bollywood actor from Bhutan who 20 years earlier had been in Cyprus with his girlfriend who was competing in Miss Universe. She was Miss India or Miss World. I always get it confused. And she won. And when she won, she was whisked off to New York with her boyfriend at the time. And my uncle, who had been driving them around the island, because he's a cab driver, had kept their stuff, unbeknownst to us, at our house. And so we had come home one day and there was this Bhutanese supermodel sunbathing on our deck. So we didn't call the police right away.
No.
And he stayed the evening and he talked to us and talked about his country and where he was from. But it was like 20 years ago. There was no social media. And then he kind of disappeared into the world and we disappeared off into the world in our lives. And then cut to 20 years later, me trying to figure out what to do with some time off. I was going to India on a charity trip. And I thought, well, what's in the vicinity that I haven't done before? And I was like, wasn't that guy that was suntanning in our house 20 years ago from that little kingdom? And so I found him online and we connected. And he said, please, I would love to welcome you to my country. And when we reunited, I was kind of just like, hey, man, wow, this is crazy. You would have thought I was his long lost sister that had risen from the dead.
Yeah.
Embraced me and held me. But it was part of I think what's so beautiful about that culture, which is that the fact that my family had taken him in and had been hospitable to him, it was sort of this debt of gratitude owed in the universe. And so it was the most transformative week that I spent in Bhutan being cared for by him. And I was traveling with my best friend in the whole world, Cece, who rides motorcycles. So we had just casually asked, hey, could we grab a bike when we were there so we could kind of see more of the country? And he said, absolutely not a problem. Shows up with this great bike. We get on. We ride it pretty hard. Going around the mountains and the countryside, just really, having a time. And every time we would park the bike, there'd be crowds of people around it. And we just thought, well, it's a nice looking bike. Sure, take a gander. Cool. And we didn't find out till later that Kelly's family for generations have been the bodyguards of the king. And that this bike was part of the king's royal fleet. So we had been taking the king's motorcycle on joyrides around the country. Thankfully, it did come back in one piece. I don't think anybody got in trouble. But that's a true Bhutanese hospitality for you.
I love that. And it's all rooted in a sense of gratitude and paying it forward. So go to Bhutan. I gotta get my boots on Bhutanese soil. Where do you go when you're back in BC for coffee?
Ooh, one of my favorite coffee shops is in Ganges on Salt Spring Island called Switchboard Coffee. They also have, of course, Salt Spring Coffee, which you can get everywhere, which is delicious.
And if it's on Salt Spring, you're pretty much guaranteed a good time anywhere. Dinner. Yeah. Where do you seek out a good dinner?
Ooh, well, I'm a fan of Vidges.
Yes, of course.
Some mean, delicious Indian food that's also super creative. It just reminds me of my dad's cooking.
Yeah, fusion.
I'm a huge fan of Vidges. There's also, because I'm often on the island, in Sydney, there's a place called Fresh Tandoori Flavors. It is the best Indian food you can get on Vancouver Island, right in Sydney. Their dal and chicken tikka, chef's kiss. Delicious.
I'm writing those down right now. I will be seeking that out later. Hiking. Where is it that you'd like to take a hike?
Well, as you can probably tell, I am a big fan of Salt Spring, and they have great
Yeah.
hikes all over the island. But for me, I need little treats and treasures along the way because I'm an
Yep.
indoor cat. So they have little ferry doors that are kind of laid in the mountain all the way up to the summit. And the view from the top is spectacular. So that's one of my favorites.
The ferry doors keep you motivated to actually get to the top for the big reveal, which is that lookout, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. They're also hard to find. Like you actually have to like go on like a treasure hunt on that hike, which I really like.
Your mom is a fashion designer. Did you inherit her passion for fashion? And when you do travel, do you find yourself seeking out places to pick up local trinkets and wares from the region that you're in?
No.
No. Zero. What a stupid question, Monty.
No, I feel like it's that thing, right? Like my mom is an incredible designer, has had shops where she's designed the clothes for as long as I can remember. And then she had a daughter, brilliant, she can just dress her up anytime she wants. And I think that was like my like inner like rebellion of like, nah, I'm going to wear the same jeans and t-shirts every single day. And she was like, okay, wonderful. But I will say what has been incredible, because I've traveled a lot with my mother too, is that she has taken me to like, Bedouin souks and like Parisian flea markets. And we're never like in a mall, in a traditional like shop like that. And so because of that, I definitely do have that bug that when I travel, I like to kind of go to like local vendors and sellers, because you're meeting people that usually have made their goods. And so you not only then to get to bring home something that's really like unique and special, but often those people will sit and chat with you and tell you where to go in the country, where to eat, what to see, what not to bother with. So it's a great place to kind of meet locals that are, there voluntarily to meet other people too. So like you're not like knocking on someone's door being like, hello, where's good coffee?
Growing up with a diverse mix of cultures under one roof must have led to some pretty amazing cooking as a youngster. Tell us what that was like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I always feel like for me, I'm sure this is not like actually, true. But for me, like my dad invented fusion cooking because he loved Indian flavor. He loved Indian spices and the combination of Indian spices, but he had Canadian kids. So we wanted like spaghetti bolognese. So my dad would make pasta, put the Parmesan cheese on the table, but then he would make the bolognese with like cumin, coriander, turmeric, cloves, cinnamon. And so he would make like a keema curry, and that would be on top of the pasta. And so that was like our version of spaghetti bolognese in our house. And it is delicious. And I still eat it to this day and make it for people. So, and it does, when I eat it, it reminds me of home. It reminds me of my dad, but it also just reminds me of like being in India. Something about like the smell of those flavors in your home can transport you.
Oh, I'll never forget my experience in the spice market in India. And second, I am coming for dinner. I want that pasta. I'm going to say a word, and I want you to tell me a place in Canada that reminds you of that word. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Adventurous.
Ooh, I think of the Rockies.
Yep, that is an adventure playground. And if you can't find something to do in the Rockies, you have not got a pulse. I'd say that for sure. When I say the word scenic, what is it that you think about Canada?
I spent quite a bit of time on the East Coast, and there was about a week I spent in Newfoundland. And it's like the embodiment of scenic. Everywhere you looked was like a picture postcard. It was gorgeous.
True story. I'll attest to that one. When I say the word entertaining, where is a place in Canada that reminds you of that word? Entertaining.
That area right in front of the Empress Hotel in Victoria, where all of the street performers are. Super entertaining. They put on great shows. Everybody, like the crowd gets thick. Everybody watches, and I try to like hide pretty deep because it is also like terrifying for someone to be like, "Hey, you girl, come over here and hold this sword." But I love watching it, and I'm thoroughly entertained, and I'm always the last person to leave. And you get to pay the artists yourself, which always feels wonderful to know you're supporting local arts.
The Busker Festival in the summertime in Victoria. Those events, like you said, they're going on all over town outside buskers. When I say the word fashionable, where in Canada pops into your mind?
Calgary.
What? Said no one ever. Come on. Who says Calgary when I say fashionable?
Me, Calgary, because you have to remember. So I had come from England and I'd moved to Calgary, and my family every year would take me to the Stampede. And I'd show up and there were all these Canadians with like these amazing cowboy boots and jeans and belt buckles and vests and these extraordinary hats. And it was like, man, this is a city that has like a fashion identity. Like, you are proud to be from here. You wear the uniform. And there's nowhere else in Canada that I can say is like that. Like, someone from Calgary, you're like, I see it. I know it. I love it.
I had no idea where you were going to take that, and you couldn't be more right. It is so true. For that 1 week in the beginning of July, man, that town transforms into the wild, wild west. You are basically a citizen of the world, Hannah. But what is the most Canadian thing about you that makes you proud?
Ooh, what's the most Canadian thing about me? I feel like the most Canadian thing about me is the stuff that I do as soon as I enter back into Canada. When I come back into Canada, I am like, okay, got to go to Timmy's, get my double-double. Then I'm going to go swing by, grab a, poutine, extra gravy, extra curds, then I'll have a Caesar. I miss home. I love all the things that make us special and unique, and that you can only get here, except ketchup chips. Never figured that one out. That's the only one that's not for me. But I feel like that's pretty Canadian. So when everyone's like, oh, all the cliches, I'm like, yep, every single one of them. That's me.
You would have to explain to a foreigner what each one of those items that you just said actually was. They wouldn't know if that was a food or a hat or a shoe.
That's true.
So this is the Northern Take, and this is the part of the show where we get your take on all things Canadian. Are you ready?
Yeah. Stretched
Rapid fire. The one Canadian thing that you can't live without.
The one Canadian thing I can't live without? My family.
I was going to say your hubby. He's Canuck, right?
That's right. Yeah, I've got a whole assortment of Canadians in my life that I'm not giving up for nothing.
That's right. Keep those. Treasure them. The one place in Canada that everybody should visit.
Salt Spring. I feel like those Gulf Islands are such incredible places. Hornby's amazing. Best mead out there. If you're looking for a good mead place. But the Gulf Islands are absolutely amazing. So get on the ferry and just island hop. It's super special.
And our country is diverse, but the Gulf Islands are something unique that you can't really find anywhere else in the country, even where there are islands. Now, the most underrated Canadian place that deserves more attention.
The most underrated place that deserves attention. How do I feel like I'm back in school? Like I'm sweating.
Right.
Oh my gosh. That's a very difficult question because what are you going to say? Tofino? Yeah. That's not underrated. It's gorgeous. And Cape Breton? Please. Stunning. What do you want me to say? Everything is so beautiful and unique and different in this country. Go everywhere, because anywhere you go, it's going to find something absolutely that will blow your mind with the most lovely people.
Well, you mentioned the West Coast. You mentioned the East Coast. The only other coast that we should probably slip in there is the North Coast, Tuktoyaktuk, Iqaluit, somewhere up there. And I got to say, folks should explore that if they can, too. Something you always pack when you're going away.
Oh, I try every single time. And if I forget, I get it at the airport as soon as I land to get a little small notebook. And I write, because I'm not very good at journaling. I'm not very good at that. But what I try to do is every day kind of write just the Coles Notes version of where I went, what I ate, what I saw, cool people that I met, what their names are, that kind of little short list for me, places not to go again. Just so that because it must happen to you all the time too. Someone's like, oh, you've been to X? Where should I stay? What should I eat? And you forget. So I try to keep a little very honest list and, look at my Bhutan story. You never know 20 years later when you're going to hit up somebody and be like, hey, can I come visit? So that's actually very handy. And I have a bunch of those from all over the world.
I am going to take that suggestion and incorporate that into my travel in the future. And finally, what makes you proudest to be called Canadian?
What makes me proudest about being a Canadian is when I travel. The reaction and response I get when people in that country find out that I'm Canadian. Our international reputation is so stellar, and we're so welcome everywhere we go, that's wonderful, because that makes me feel like every other Canadian that has like come before through this country has treated everybody, for the most part, I assume, with like grace and respect, and has been there just to kind of learn as much as they can, and has been a good guest. And so that's really wonderful. So I see that reaction, and I try to not screw up our reputation.
What a great way to wrap the show, honestly, with gratitude and saying thanks to all the Canadian travelers that came before us and paved the way for us to be well received. And you couldn't have said it better, the fact that we are welcomed with open arms everywhere I've ever been, and I don't know a place that we could possibly seek to go that wouldn't look fondly upon our maple leaf on the back of our backpack.
That's true.
Well, Hannah, thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you on the show and for sharing your amazing travel adventures with our listeners. I know for a fact that you've inspired me. You've given me some awesome tips that I will incorporate into my travel regime and to inspire those people out there listening to go after their dreams. Hannah, thanks again.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of The Northern Take. I'm John Montgomery, and thanks so much for taking your time to journey with us.